listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Hello there, IELTS podcast listeners. This episode is about IELTS writing, about your essay composition and transitions, and how that can improve your cohesion score, your coherence. Now, what are the transitions? What are transitions? What is the cohesion? First of all, cohesion is how it all ties together. Okay? Is it one coherent thought, or are we bouncing around with different ideas and different thoughts and opinions all in the same essay? For example, like a paragraph could start off talking about the advantages of international marketing and then finish talking about international trade. Okay, I see that quite common. I see that quite a lot. And if it was totally cohesive, perhaps we could get there, but we'd have to tie in each step, or with each supporting sentence, we'd have to be slowly building an argument on and linking international trade with international marketing with international trade and exports and imports and stuff like that. So let's just have a quick look at the easiest ones and probably the most logical way to make transitions in your essay. This would be like firstly, secondly, thirdly, finally. And that's rather straightforward, and it's easy to implement, and it's easy to read as well. And this method could be useful for your flow diagrams. If you're describing a flow diagram and you need to clearly explain the stages. So we would transition between each idea just using simply firstly, secondly, thirdly, fourthly, finally. And then at the end we'd put something like to summarize or overall or consequently. That's good, and that would show a clear logical progression of ideas. Now, there is a warning I want to tell you straight away at this stage. The warning is that just by using firstly, secondly, thirdly, or whichever transition, whichever device, whichever words we use, it will not automatically make the writing cohesive or coherent. There would still have to be a logical progression of thoughts behind, still have to be a logical progression of thoughts on the paper and clearly presented. The firstly, secondly, thirdly, and the transition words will just help the reader follow the path that you've already marked. So that's probably a good way to think about it. We've got a path made by logical supporting sentences. So it's topic sentence, then logical arguments presented afterwards in order. Okay, that would be the task of the supporting sentences. And then afterwards we'll probably finish with like a conclusion. So if we think about it as a path, these transition words will be the signposts. Okay, like saying 50 meters ahead, turn right, then an arrow showing the right, showing the direction right afterwards. So that's probably the best way of thinking about it. Now, I know that when I'm correcting essays and when I'm also tutoring, I say try to avoid repetition. Now, it might sound like a contradiction what I'm going to say now, but sometimes repetition is necessary to a certain extent. Repetition can help improve comprehension. Comprehension is an important element to be aware of in the essay writing, in your essay writing. Essay writing is a tricky task, but easier with transition words. Now, if you want to go back and listen to that again, you could hear me repeating key concepts from each sentence and then starting the next sentence with what I left the last sentence with. And I did that on purpose just to show you how it was much clearer if I just kept on repeating the same concept and then repeating the same word and then taking it to the next point, or the next logical point. So a better way to do this, especially when we're writing, would be to use synonyms. Okay. And so, for example, we're saying pollution is a serious issue nowadays and has grown in importance over the past few decades. One of the reasons for the rise in contaminated air, poor water quality and endangered species is largely because of industrialization. Okay, and then you can see in the first instance I talked about pollution, and in the second one I was talking about types of pollution, just so I didn't have to say pollution again. Okay, I just gave a few examples. So that's one way we use in transitions, and it's synonyms. So the next one would be to use demonstratives, and this is probably a little bit easier but maybe a little bit more dangerous. So what's a demonstrative? Well, it's basically words like this, those, or or them, or, as mentioned previously, these issues. Okay, and they demonstrate what we were, the object or the name or the noun that we were referring to previously. Okay, so let me give you an example. So imagine we're talking about the IMF, okay, and we've said a sentence about the IMF, perhaps in the topic sentence, and then we're continuing to write about the IMF in our supporting sentences. In this case, we would say, for example, the IMF has been responsible for numerous bailouts across the globe over the last 20 years. This organization also handles, or is also responsible for implementing or encouraging governments to implement austerity measures, blah, blah, blah. But I'm saying this organization. I don't want to be continually using IMF. Okay? Now, here's another tip. Make sure that it's clear. Okay? Don't start the topic sentence with the demonstrative, as in this financial institution has helped numerous countries around the world for the last 20 years. The IMF is often blamed for austerity measures, blah, blah, blah. Okay? If I start off the sentence with this organization, I've got no idea which organization we're talking about until we get to the second sentence, which is the IMF is also responsible for austerity measures, blah, blah, blah. So just make sure it's clear first when we're actually starting the paragraph or the essay. Sometimes this can be a bit difficult, especially if we're referring to big organizations with quite complex names or long names. So in this case, for example, if we're talking about the WHO organization, we might want to write it out in the full version first. We might want to say the World Health Organization has implemented numerous vaccination campaigns over the last 30 years. This organization, blah, 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 blah. In addition, the WHO, and then just write the WHO in capital letters. Okay? This way, we don't have to keep saying this organization, and we don't have to say they, which could get a little bit unclear. We can just say WHO and use the acronym. If we do this, after we've written out the full version, World Health Organization, we put brackets, WHO, close brackets, and then for the duration of the essay, for the rest of the essay, we can just refer to it as the WHO. Okay? And and because we mentioned it previously, the examiner knows we're going to be talking about the WHO, the World Health Organization. So the next part I want to talk about would be to give you examples of some of the transition sentences. Okay, but before we go onto this, as I've been saying, this is really a key part for your supporting sentences. And if you've got a solid essay structure, then you'll know that each sentence has a certain task to do, and all you have to do is drop your information into this solid essay structure. And if you're looking for a solid essay structure, like an easy step-by-step way to write your essays, you can just look at sentenceguide.com, and there it's just marked out in one chapter the instructions on how to write each single sentence, and it all ties in together so you can get really strong, coherent ideas to help you organize your thoughts into a logical, cohesive, coherent, strong argument to help you score better. So anyway, as I was saying, the examples of some transition sentences. Well, we could use, to show if they're similar, some of the ideas are similar, we could just say, similarly, the Médecins Sans Frontières, or the Doctors Without Borders organization, also helps countries needing help with vaccinations. You see? And here the key word would be similarly or likewise. Yeah? So imagine we've just started off a topic sentence with the IMF, and then we could just say, likewise, the World Bank has also implemented numerous programs, often caused with introducing austerity into a country. You see? So likewise, similarly, we could also say to add if we want to build the argument. So we could say, in addition to this, the World Health, in addition to this, the IMF is often supported by the WTO. Okay, so it's in addition or furthermore, and this is just to add information. And like I said before, we're going to be using this in the middle of the body paragraph to build your argument and to make it more believable. We're going to be going into more details. Another way to improve the transition would just be to just give examples. Yeah. For example, the IMF has often stated its goal as being reducing world poverty. Okay, and as you can see, these are all components we're going to be using in the body paragraph. Now, the final one would be to emphasize a certain point that we've made. So in this case, we could say, imagine we've just talked about the IMF. We'll say, indeed, this organization is often criticized. And here we've used two transitions. We've used, not two transitions, we've used one transition, the indeed, to go on to the next point, and then we use the demonstrative, which would be this organization, and now we can go into the details of the sentence. Okay? So another way to emphasize the next sentence or to transition into a point would be undoubtedly. Yep, undoubtedly, these organizations across the West are often viewed negatively by developing countries, blah, blah, blah. So when we're looking at transitions, just to finish off now, that we must understand that sometimes repetition is necessary, but when it is necessary, we're going to use it with demonstratives or synonyms. And there's also different tools we can use. We can talk about similarities. We can add furthermore. We can add more information. We can emphasize information. We can give examples, and these all act as devices of transition, or transitionary devices, perhaps, just to help you organize and structure your essay. And as I said before, two last words here. Just by using them, we're not going to have an instantly coherent essay. What comes after them is going to be what builds the coherence, but using them will definitely help the reader follow the path that you've marked or the direction that you're going. And the final thing is that these are not difficult to use, but if you are having difficulty building coherent paragraphs, then you might want to have a look at sentenceguide.com, because we're going to it in a little bit more detail, and I just give you basically a set format to follow. It's just a little bit easier. Right, that's the end of this podcast. If you enjoyed it, have a look at IELTSPodcast.com. You can sign up to the email list, get lots of information there, get some special offers for essay corrections, help you improve, get some feedback. You can also go to sentenceguide.com, online IELTS course there, or you can get your essays checked at IELTSwritingtask.net. Whatever you do something. Get a move on, get working, and you will get there in the end. Alright, and it's Ben Worthington. One last thought. If you enjoyed the podcast, have a look at iTunes, go over there, leave a review. That would be fantastic. I'd really appreciate that. Help me a lot. And yeah, all the best with your IELTS preparation. Have a good day.
For listening to IELTSPodcast.com.